You are listening to Scenecraft Nightcap.
Welcome to another Nightcap, a series of bonus episodes where we pull back from the scene and into the wider world of film. I'm Cody, here with my co-hosts,
Mark
and Connor.
Tonight, we're going to pour ourselves another drink and have an open discussion about Dream Scenario, directed by Kristoffer Borgli, starring Nicolas Cage, Julianne Nicholson, and Tim Meadows, among many others.
You've been on my mind recently.
Yeah?
You keep popping up in my dreams. You don't do anything, you're just there.
So, this specific person, the remarkable nobody, I've also had that experience. Do you have a picture?
Have you been dreaming about me?
Have I been dreaming about you?
Yeah.
The logline for Dream Scenario reads, Paul Matthews, a hapless family man, finds his life turned upside down when millions of strangers suddenly start seeing him in their dreams. First off, let's start with our general impressions of the film, and then we'll dive in a little further, go into a spoiler warning. Mark and Connor, you guys saw this together long before me. What were your impressions, and how was your theater experience?
Yeah, so Mark and I saw this together back in October 14th, so just over a month ago, and we saw this as part of the Chicago International Film Festival.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah, it was super fun. It was Mark's first time going to the Chicago Film Festival, and I think it was a good first one for him to go to.
Oh, it was great. It was so much fun.
Just to set the scene a little bit, it was a completely packed theater. It's in the Music Box Theater, so it's an old school film auditorium, probably seats about 700 people. Every seat was filled, and it was like a rowdy crowd, to say the least, for this.
Yeah, I think I was telling you guys that after having seen the film, I really think that it truly benefits from that rowdy crowd and getting that like instantaneous feedback and energy from others around you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like a laugh a minute, and there were a lot of reactions, namely from a guy who is 2 rows behind us who just reacted to pretty much every single thing. It was like every minute or two.
Yeah.
Made for a bit of a distracting watch, but Mark and I still laugh about it, and I'm actually kind of glad it happened because now we have a new inside joke.
Yeah, he was very distracting. But I think the trade-off was the crowd was electric, and it definitely added to the movie experience overall.
The other very cool thing, outside of us really enjoying watching the movie and being part of this cool setting to watch it in, was Kristoffer Borgli was actually there in attendance at the festival. So he introduced the film, said a few words. He basically said, I'll let the movie speak for itself. And then at the very end, came in and did a Q&A, which was pretty fun to hear directly from him after that fun experience of watching the movie.
Yeah, it's that kind of rose-tinted glasses effect that you have sometimes with film festivals where even if something I think is mediocre or like just good, it can kind of be elevated to great or like a fantastic experience just because of the energy and buzz around it. I feel like that's an actual phenomenon. But luckily this film, at least in my mind, it holds up either way. Because I had the exact opposite experience. I went to see this at an AMC a couple days ago, and nearly empty theater. I think there were like 5 other people maximum. It was essentially an emotionless audience. It was, I would compare it to like those YouTube videos you see where clever editors have kind of taken out the laugh track from from famous sitcoms, like, you know, Ross from Friends not having a laugh track in the background, and suddenly it's like terrifying and creepy. And
Big Bang Theory is another one.
Big Bang Theory is a huge one. And it was kind of like that in a way, but I was just the laugh track. It was really just me laughing, and then me just looking from right to left, like anybody. Yeah, I guess it's just me. But still, yeah, I had an amazing time just laughing by myself. I loved the film. My impressions on the whole, I feel like Borgli seems deeply interested in using his films as satire and commentary on this like increasingly narcissistic fame-seeking world that we're in that seems to be getting worse and worse with like TikTok culture, or arguably worse. I'm not one to say, I guess,
Yeah.
but and from what I could read about it, his previous film, Sick of Myself, seems to kind of do something similar. Mark, you may know more about that.
So I actually recently watched that in
Oh,
preparation
right,
for our
yeah.
discussion today, just so I have a frame of reference for his other films, because he's only done 2 other movies. His first one was a documentary called Drib. I think it might be a mockumentary. I'm not entirely sure, but that was his first feature. And then his second movie was Sick of Myself. And it's interesting because I saw posters for it at the Madison, Wisconsin Film Festival. And the poster art just kind of caught my attention. And I had heard good things about the movie, but I never actually saw it. So I watched it a few days ago. And it's interesting that it actually plays as a really nice companion piece to Dream Scenario.
Cool.
In something like Sick of Myself, which tackles similar subjects, but from a different perspective, in that in Sick of Myself, the female protagonist is searching for attention from the public in any way that she can get it. Dream Scenario, it's almost kind of the opposite in that Nick Cage didn't want any of this to happen at first.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, he does some things after he gets the notoriety, but he didn't really want this to happen. So it's kind of 2 different sides of the coin. And so in that sense, I think they actually play really well with each other.
Yeah. And Mark, just going off of that for a second, I love that this film set up that premise almost as like a monkey's paw situation where it's like, yes, he didn't want fame necessarily, but he wanted recognition from his hard-earned work and research. And this is kind of like a cruel twist on that recognition that he wanted.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. I'd say for me overall, the movie itself, if I were to just kind of talk about it, the log line, as you read at the beginning, Cody, it just was something that got my attention. Right off the bat, I knew that this was something that I would at least be interested by. But what was really great about the movie was it took that idea and then it just ran with it in a lot of different directions. It had a lot to say about virality and self-identity and masculinity in some ways. And so I think it's a jumping off point, and I think Borgli goes in a lot of interesting different directions. And so I loved the film, and with it being an A24 film, I was kind of waiting for that moment to really ostracize me, which I feel like time and time again with A24 films, there's always that one point in a movie where you get to that. But in this, it
They've
never
gone
really
too
happened.
far.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I don't really feel like there was that point in this. I feel like it was pretty accessible. I had a blast with it. So I've been recommending it to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Cody, that you had the exact opposite of a theater experience than Mark and I, because in my head, the laughs and the sort of the rowdiness of the theater is inseparable from my movie watching experience. So I'm really looking forward to watching it again with my wife, who hasn't seen it yet, but I'm sure that's going to be a different watch because we'll probably be doing it here at home versus in a theater.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm really curious to get your follow-up on that experience versus in the theater with the huge sold-out crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, do we want to dive into spoiler talk?
Sure.
Yeah.
Get into some actual plot points
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
themes, performances. Cool. All right.
I think the takeaway is, before we get to spoilers, go out and see this movie, support it. It's really original.
It is. Yeah.
And it has plenty to say. So go out and see it.
All right. So let's dig in. Spoilers for Dream Scenario starting right now. So I think this film, sort of like the theater experience you were talking about, Connor, is inseparable from its star, Nicolas Cage. I just don't think this would be the same film without him, or with another cast member in his role. What did you guys think of the performance, the casting, the decision to cast him, and the specificity he brings to the role?
I know Nicolas Cage has gotten a lot of notoriety, almost cult-like status recently, maybe in like the past 5-10 years. Obviously, he's like a very interesting public figure. But I am not like a Nick Cage fan by any means. I honestly haven't even watched a lot of his movies. I think I've probably seen the least out of, you guys. But after watching it, I really think he's the only actor that could pull this off. He did such a great job of straddling that line between somebody who's got some charisma and some gravitas, but also is like a bit of a wounded figure, and it just really drives the film by being sort of his interesting self, especially at the age he's at now. He's lived this whole life experience. It's almost like for me, thinking about when Bill Murray crossed over into doing more dramatic roles a little later in life with Rushmore or Lost in Translation. This feels like a nice parallel with Nicolas Cage's career for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I was reading an interview with Nicolas Cage where he actually mentioned that this was one of 5 scripts that he's ever read that he knew immediately he wanted to star in.
Oh, cool.
And I think it has to do with his history of being memeified. I don't know if there's a more elegant word.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But, and arguably, I think he may be one of the first stars to kind of receive that treatment. And so I think he was able to channel his real life experience, like you mentioned, Connor, into this role. And I think that's what drew him to this role in the first place as well. So I think he's the perfect cast for it. Apparently, Adam Sandler was considered at one point as well.
Oh, no way.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I wouldn't have thought of that, but
makes sense.
that's like the only other person I could think of that may be able to pull it off. I can't really think of anyone else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have a hard time with Adam Sandler.
I was
in that
really
role,
happy to see Nicolas Cage not be afraid to poke fun at himself with this role, though. I think it
Me
was
too.
the perfect choice. Honestly, my favorite performance of his that I've ever seen in a movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. And it does seem like one of those scripts where, and I don't know this for sure, Mark, maybe you know more in having watched some interviews or the Q&A after the screening, but it seems like one of those scripts where you would write it with Nicolas Cage in mind. And it's like, you may as well not even make it
Right.
if you can't land him. That's happened many times. And would they have made the movie? Maybe, probably, but you're so heavily banking on getting this person. Cage just has that it factor that makes the character so awkward and desperate. You guys were saying the same thing. He's not afraid to make fun of himself and kind of be a pathetic character in a way. And the whole setup of the intelligence theory that he was working on in the film that was stolen from him, that's really perfect. It just puts his character in this place of complete hopelessness where he would be ready for an explosion of attention and fame, and it kind of escalates and spirals out of control.
Right. It's like he wasn't able to plan for it, but he still wants to try to harness it and ride the wave as much as he can. Yeah, really awkward is a great way to describe it.
So obviously one of the major topics of this movie is the idea of virality and how it can happen overnight. And then also the backlash that can come of that as well. Something like cancel culture. This movie has plenty to say about those things. What did you guys think of those 2 themes?
I think for me, it was a nice way to depict expectation versus reality. And I think we'll probably get into a key scene in a little bit, but that felt like it was the biggest takeaway for me. The fact that he's going viral is just sort of a vehicle for this gap of expectation versus reality to be explored. So I think there was a definitely an image that Nicolas Cage's character had of himself. And then when he saw how others perceived him, there was just a huge difference in those 2 things in his mind. And I think that was very hard for him to grapple with. So that central plot point of going viral was really taken to the extreme end of the extreme here. And it just served it for me as a reminder to appreciate those who are around you in your life and not take those people for granted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting how little control he has of everybody's opinion of him. In that, Cody, you mentioned that he wanted to be known for that intelligence theory that he had come up with. And in a perfect world, he'd be the one that'd be publishing in Nature magazine, and he'd be the one that would be on the lecture circuit. But instead, he doesn't get that. And then he gets this chance to be famous for reasons he never really wanted to be in the first place. And so there's that desperation on his side, and then him trying to cash in on that in different ways. And so I just think it's interesting that when they depict him in the dreams, he really isn't doing anything. So it's just, well, the first half, right?
Well,
so, so he's really famous for doing quite literally nothing. And so I didn't know if that was commentary in and of itself, or if it was just his character, kind of being this pathetic guy. I didn't know if he was actually making a comment on the fact that sometimes you literally do nothing and you can become super famous. What did you guys make of that?
Yeah, dreaming is kind of the perfect framing device for fame, cancel culture, because of the fact that it's out of your control. And the actual content of the dream seems to change with what he is feeling and doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's any coincidence that we shift from being passive and not really doing anything in the dreams to being actively violent and harmful after he attempts to quote unquote, cash in on his virality.
Yep.
His question to everybody when he's not doing anything in their dream, it's almost like from his end, he's expecting to be like a hero. Like, what was I doing? I just stood there and did nothing? Like, he almost wants to be the savior, or wants to see how they think of him in his dream. Like, he wants to be reflected in a really positive way.
Right.
And then when it's just not what he wants, either in him doing nothing or him like committing crimes and hurting people, it's just the exact opposite of what he would hope for.
Right.
Yeah.
So one trope that this movie does that I've almost kind of grown to enjoy a bit is whenever a teacher is teaching something in class, whatever that lesson is, ultimately plays into the movie in some way. And so in this one, he's talking a lot about camouflage and the zebra, and how the camouflage only works when it's in a big group of zebras. And it took me, I wouldn't say a while, but I had to think about it a little bit. And obviously the comparison is Paul himself. If you saw him in a group of people, he would just kind of blend in. And so that's why when taken alone and put into people's dreams, he really kind of sticks out.
That's a great point.
And so
Yeah,
I found that kind of interesting to reflect on.
Another dark side of going viral that I'm glad that they showed in this film is the unwanted fame that it can attract. Like when we see that home invasion scene where there's like an intruder breaking into their home, he tries to like defend his family, but he kind of freezes. Then they have that detective or that cop explain to them that you need to arm your house with like a better security system. You need to start working out. Like, it's all these sort of quick, very real reactions.
Life changes.
Yeah. That they need to start thinking about, and they're just totally unprepared for, like the dark side of going viral.
Right. Yeah. I think the detective actually calls him helpless, which is a total jab.
Just to take him while he's down.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's another really interesting thing that he taps into. And then also, we also see a shift in the different opportunities that he has available to him, right? So at one point he's talking about Obama and Sprite, and then
Sprite is all over this.
Yeah. And then very quickly they shift to him being like an alt-right culture icon. And it's once again, the commentary on it is quite funny and topical for our times, but it's just interesting to see behind the curtain how maybe a company would react when courting this cultural figure like that.
Speaking of courting the cultural figure and like sort of the marketing side of thing, what did you guys think of the guest stars and cameos that we see? So we have a couple great ones here. We have Michael Cera, we have Tim Meadows, Nicholas Braun,
so many,
and Kate Berlin.
These were great choices. I think they're all perfectly cast for that kind of bullshitty startup culture, that like parlance that everyone has in that sector. And I love the name of the marketing startup, Thoughts, it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Borgli basically casted 3 people that are comedians essentially, or play comedic roles. Michael Cera, Kate Berlant, and Nicholas Braun, who's like the king of awkwardness in Succession. So it's just hilarious to see them used. Like you already like start laughing when you see them appear on screen.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I loved Tim Meadows' presence, especially at the end of the film when he allows Paul to stay at his house and he has a line like, if you need anything, just send me a text. Like he can't even go upstairs to ask for something.
He can't even turn the light off that's above his cot.
Yeah,
it's just like a terrible setup. So for all of the cameos that we see on screen, I think there's one influence that we don't necessarily see on screen but is felt, and I wanted to ask Mark in particular a little bit about this one. So Ari Aster is an executive producer on the movie and helped shepherd it along. Did you feel the influence of Ari Aster watching this movie?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's actually funny having watched Sick of Myself because that movie has a ton of body horror in it.
Oh, really?
And so the needle tipped back towards Borgli a little bit more than I initially had after just seeing Dream Scenario. But there are definitely moments where Aster's presence was felt, especially I'd say at the end of the film where Paul accidentally crushes the one teacher's fingers in the door.
Disgusting.
Oh,
brutal.
Yeah, that really just felt like a Ari Aster influence, you could say.
Yeah. For me, even if I hadn't known that Aster was attached to this in any way, I feel like I would have had that thought of like, this feels like Joaquin Phoenix in the role of Beau from
some
Beau's
inspiration
Afraid.
there.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's kind of that same passive nature, just kind of letting life walk all over you. And seeing the effect of that in the horrors that can ensue. It thematically in that way, I found them to be really comparable.
Which is really interesting because you could make an argument that a more captivating protagonist is one who's more active.
Yeah.
And in this year alone, we saw two very passive main characters, and they play out in very different ways, but there's definitely some similarities between the two.
Yeah. One thing I definitely want to do before we dive into one bigger scene in particular, but maybe a couple other moments that we all loved that made this movie great for us. I want to discuss the filmmaking craft and what it adds particularly to the concept of dreaming.
One of the components of Borgli's filmmaking that I found really interesting was his choice to visually depict conversations. So an example would be when he's playing the voice recording in his car after that initial lunch with a colleague. We are initially put in the scene when they're talking, and then eventually we cut to him in the car listening to the voice recording, and then we cut back to the restaurant again, but now we have the voice recording quality of the audio over them in the lunch talking. And that happens a couple other times, because another one is when he gets a call from the dinner, from the party host, the guy that throws all the great dinners. Instead of hearing him describe what happens over the phone, like during the one dinner, when they discover that Paul's in everybody's dreams, we just instead see that scene play out.
Yeah.
And then lastly, another one would be when the students are describing their dreams. Instead of just talking them out loud, we cut to visual depictions of them.
Yeah, right.
That may be my favorite sequence in the whole film.
I really do like that sequence too. Yeah.
You're just seeing back to back this really striking, bizarre imagery of him, again, passively just strolling through the dreamscape of all of these students. And the imagery is just so cool. There's one where there are crocodiles inching forward towards this young student sitting on a piano.
There was one that reminded me of Almost Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's like an earthquake type scenario in a big open room, and like stuff's flying around, and it really reminded me of that set of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, it totally does. And the edit here, the editor, which in this case was actually Borgli, apparently cut this movie himself, along with gentleman Harrison Fishman was an additional editor. But the way that they managed to integrate these little vignettes and dream sequences into reality. They don't cut it in a way where you're hearing a harp play and you're fading to white and we're in a dream. That's kind of the whole point of the film, is sometimes that lucid dreaming, you can't tell reality from the dream. And the way that they accomplish that with the edit specifically and stylistically is amazing. I also love the way it was shot. I just think the scene that we're going to discuss is a great example of the subtlety in lighting setup, where in the dream version, you're seeing like a slightly different look. You're seeing pools of light, more shadow, generally a bit darker. Whereas in reality, the light level is a bit higher, but it's not so different where you can easily tell one from the other. And that mixture is so effective. It's sort of like you're dreaming along with these characters. And
Right. It's funny you should say that. I was listening to an interview with Borgli where he said one of the more subtle clues that, especially on a rewatch, that you may notice is that in the dream versions, he described it as the environment being more poorly rendered, and that if you look in the bookcases and you look at the books, like they won't have titles on the
that's
the
interesting.
spines, and like little
Very
things
cool.
like that are taken out. So if you really want to be a detective and kind of look around, you can kind of piece together which one's real and which one's not. But it doesn't smack you over the head with it. It's a lot more subtle, and I appreciate that.
exactly. And I think that's a good cue to kind of dig into this scene we've been referring to, which I think we all agree was always going to be the main scene we want to talk about from the film.
Well, I think for Mark and I, when we watched it, right after we saw it, we were like, oh my God, that scene. It's the scene where Paul and Molly actually go back to Molly's apartment to reenact a sex dream that she's had with Paul. And she was one of the very few people to actually have a sex dream, a dream where he is doing something in the dream aside from just standing there. And it's
Right.
become a bit of an obsession. She keeps having this dream over and over again. So she is very interested in trying to manifest it in real life and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of things here. So this is actually the scene that Kristoffer Borgli originated this movie from.
Oh,
He thought it'd be hilarious if there was something as like sexy as like two people, maybe starting to do something, and then somebody just like completely ruins it.
Right.
In this case, with like a huge fart, and which was just shocking. And then the other thing that happens, but this is what I mentioned before about that like very wide gap between expectation and reality. We see it play out in a super funny, like very visceral way in this scene. Nicolas Cage, his character, obviously has one way he thinks that this night is going to go, or that he hopes it goes, and it's just the exact opposite that we see play out in real life.
Mhm.
yeah.
What I love about it is that for it being a recreation of a dream, it feels so uncomfortably real in
does,
that
yeah.
that he has nothing in common with her. He tries to strike up conversation about her bicycle. I think he asks if it's like a fixed speed or something, and she's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's just a bike." Like he's grasping at anything just to kind of
Mhm.
bring up conversation, just because there's that huge age gap. And so it's just it made me want to crawl out of my skin just because of how real it felt, but also just how uncomfortable it was.
Yeah, I think what makes the scene really work is the fact that he says like no less than 3 times, I'm married.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and yet it still kind of progresses slowly. She's like, yeah, I get that, but like we're just going to kind of reenact
Right.
the dream, and as soon as you get uncomfortable, like we can stop. But she kind of knows in the back of her head like it's not going to stop. They're just
Right.
going to keep going, and she's going to fulfill her dream with this reality. And just to kind of step through what happens in the scene, the beginning of the scene, she is sitting on the couch, like in her sweats, and she sees a dark figure in the
Mhm.
corner of her apartment, which is, revealed to be Nicolas Cage. And she's kind of really rattled and shaky, and is like, who's there? And he steps out from the darkness and then comes and sits next to her on the couch. And there's a really graphic shot of him like licking her ear.
Oh yeah, forgot about that.
And yeah, and a couple other really graphic shots, and essentially it's a really brutal sexual fantasy, but ultimately the character of Molly is very, aroused by it. So she's trying to recreate what happened in the dream, and it keeps telling him like, "Oh, it was so good. It was the best ever."
Right.
And just wants that feeling in real life, I guess.
Were either of you reminded by the man behind Winky's scene in Mulholland Drive watching this?
I was just going to say that. I think because we see the dream play out.
Yeah.
And then it's shot in such a similar way that when it's reality and they're trying to recreate the dream, there's that verisimilitude, but not quite the same.
Yeah, and Mark, that's exactly what I was talking about with the cinematography, the way it was lit. In the dream, dark shadow in the corner of the room. You can barely see him.
Yeah.
And then in reality, it kind of turns it into a goofy situation because it's fully
He's clearly
lit.
visible. Yeah.
Yeah, clearly visible. What's the line that he says where he fart? There are two farts. And they're really weird sounding. And the first fart, he's like, "Oh, sorry, it's just something the body like naturally does."
Yeah,
but she's kind of like still going with
it.
Okay.
Yeah, she's okay with it.
She's like, "It's fine, it's fine."
She's willing to put that aside.
Right.
And then it happens once more, and it's like an even louder fart, I think. And he prematurely,
jizzes his pants. Yeah.
Yep. That's right. I wonder if how they rehearsed the scene. Like, you often see their intimacy coordinators on sets for, erotic scenes of this nature. And I wonder in this case if to get that authentic experience, really uncomfortable experience, if they just kind of went with it, or if they really specifically rehearsed it. I don't know.
That's a great question.
It is. And I mean, naturally kind of an uncomfortable scene to film for like a younger woman and like this guy who's 2 or 3 times her age at least.
Yeah. I mean, an absolutely creepy but equal parts hilarious scene.
Yeah, it's incredibly uncomfortable.
Ugh, why is Nicolas Cage so good at playing that part? It's like painful.
But at the same time, there's a lot of empathy. At least I felt bad for him, majority of the runtime, especially towards the end. Let's talk a little bit about the ending and the turn from it being pretty, well, I want to say grounded, but obviously the whole premise isn't very grounded, but everybody's reactions are very real to something that feels very surreal with the introduction of that wrist bracelet.
Yeah, Mark, leading into this, one thing I wanted to express leading into the ending, we can talk all about like metaphors and cancel culture and dreams, but at the end of the day, for me, I think what made the film really work is the emotional impact.
Yeah.
Not only from seeing Nicolas Cage's character suffer and kind of being empathetic as to, what he's going through, and the fact that all of our spouses, friends, family, people we know have had dreams about us either doing something bad or dying, and they wake up angry.
Yeah.
They wake up and it's like, but I didn't do that. It was a dream. I have zero control over that. And seeing that play out over the course of a film on an emotional level is great. And one of my favorite moments throughout the runtime is when Paul is, sitting in bed with his wife and asks her, what would your sexual fantasy of me be? And she describes this amazing instance where, like, years ago, Nick Cage's character for Halloween put on a David Byrne Talking Heads oversized suit.
Yeah.
And Mark, leading into the ending, that entire Norio startup dream traveling technology sequence, like, in my mind, that entire thing was crafted to create the ending. So that, like, almost in reverse, where it's like we need Nicolas Cage to be in that David Byrne suit, saving his wife, as kind of the semi-melancholic happy ending. How do we get to that place? We invent this Norio dream travel technology.
That's super interesting.
So as Borgli is having already a lot of fun with going viral, cancel culture, the other thing that he does really well is play with the idea of like a TikTok house or like a creator house in this Norio sequence, which is super funny. It's just, you know, a bunch of like late teens or early 20s influencers. They're sort of like disaffected. They don't really care. They're really cool. Explaining what the Norio is and how they're able to advertise in people's dreams. But I just thought that was such a hilarious introduction of something that feels so real. And even though it is surreal, it is so grounded in something that could actually happen. I think that's what makes it truly hilarious.
Yeah, I think they're referred to as dreamfluencers.
Oh yeah,
which is which is just so perfect.
Yeah. The technology itself, it's so funny looking. It's that kind of translucent, like it almost looks like an oversized baby G watch with like a little pod on top.
Right.
And like you were saying, Connor, I have no doubt in my mind that if this technology were available or real, this would 100% be a way that current influencers would take advantage of it. And it truly rides that line between like, yeah, this is kind of goofy, and yes, this could very conceivably happen, and it probably would if this was real technology.
Yeah, it's funny that there's like no shame in selling out in influencer culture where, you know, they'll push any kind of brand, you know, that would get them recognition. And there's that one sequence where Nick Cage is in his home. He looks down and all of a sudden he has like a different pair of shoes on. And then that dreamfluencer appears and he's like, hey man, like, you know, you got these shoes on.
No, it's such great commentary though, because I think how scary would that be if people could really advertise to you in your dreams? It's like the only place that you're safe, the only place your eyes are actually closed from seeing these ads that we're experiencing 24/7. And the last frontier is like your actual dreams.
Yeah. Speaking to the actual title of the film, which I think is an amazing title. It's very
it's great.
Intriguing. And then I love how it connects into the actual script with Dream Scenario being the novel or the book that Paul, Nick Cage's character, is releasing about this experience, but then unfortunately being translated in the French language where he's most popular to I Am Your Nightmare.
Yeah. What I did love though was just the imagination of the movie. Like I really, really loved that. And I really appreciate movies that once you watch them, your brain just kind of goes wild thinking about other things that could happen in that universe and that world that it's built. It's just sort of endless, the possibilities. Borgli even talked about in the Q&A all these different dreams that didn't make the final cut that would have been very fun. So you can just imagine all the ones that they probably had an amazing time concepting and laughing, throwing out all these ridiculous different types of scenarios. I mean, I can't remember the last time a movie was like this imaginative.
Yeah. And I think some of the best movies offer up these questions that you're thinking about on the car ride home. It's great.
Yeah, completely agree. Well said. And one last plug, if you have not seen Dream Scenario yet, go see it in the theater or catch it on streaming when it finally hits video on demand. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I think that wraps up our Dream Scenario Nightcap episode. Thanks for joining us. Did you have any favorite moments from Dream Scenario? You can email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us on social media @Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. See you all next time.